Well, we're on air now.
Is there a way we can get Elias in on this? Because I missed that guy.
Yeah, we can get Elias in on this. Hi, Internet. We are the Dream Sleeve Facebook group.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Casual Lorecast number 16, the best one.
That's also a thing too. Yeah, 16. We are the Golden Tones. Bear witness to the glow.
It's also the number of the original Khajiit tribes, and also a number of significance in No Man's Sky, which is effectively space Tess.
Yeah, no, it really is.
It's also all three of the most important numbers put together to make the best number.
Let's see if I can get Elias in here.
Let's see if any of my friends actually responded and gave me questions. The answer is no. They didn't.
Same.
Okay, so we have, I know Silence of Autumn has prepared a few questions to ask for us to discuss, but then we have Brendo as well, who has never joined us in a lore chat before. So since we've had Silence in here before, I'm going to give Brendo the first dibs, and then maybe we can ping pong back and forth. I think that seems fair. So Brendo, do you have any questions regarding the Elder Scrolls lore, regarding the meta concepts, metaphysics, even things that are outside the universe but are still related? What do you got for us?
And he apparently has
muted microphone.
Okay, we will come back to you. That's fine. Silence, you had questions. What's your first question? Just slap it on us. It's in chat, so
unfortunately,
the folks viewing at home
will
won't
not
be able to
see
see. Yeah.
We will, of course, read it off. Maybe.
While
if
we're
we
waiting
don't, it's
for
very
that.
unprofessional. Okay, first question. Who would be the eldest and youngest of the Daedric princes? That's a very interesting question, given the fact that would time have technically existed at that point?
Well, I think that's definitely
right.
one question we can ask. Michael says yes. Time does matter at this point.
Yeah, and I do agree. However, once again, it is one of those scenarios where it is the Dawn era, so time isn't exactly linear.
Yeah, time exists. Oh, see, and we have to keep in mind that there are multiple princes who lay claim to the idea of being the first. We've got Jigalag, we've got Hermaeus Mora, we've got Namira, we've got Nocturnal. There's 4, right? That's one quarter of all the princes.
Take the title of being. Does Nocturnal assert that she's the first?
It's suggested that she is the Urdra, which is the first ancestor is what that translates to. But Namira has also been described as the Urdra. And I think is that that's not the words of Clan Mother, is it, Michael?
Say that. I'm sorry. Say that one more time.
For and the idea that Namira is the Urdra, does that come from Clan Mother?
No. I am not sure off the top of my head where that comes from.
I know Mac. Hi, Mac. Mac and I have discussed that before, because I'm more pro Nocturnal. He's more pro Namira.
Right.
And so then there's the whole thing about Sheogorath and Jigalag. Jigalag is mentioned in some lore book in game to be the most powerful. Or one of the original spirits or something like that. I'm pretty sure it was suggested that he was like the first. And he was so powerful because he knew everything, and that made him stronger. And so the other princes converted him into Sheogorath to try and curb his power, or turn it against itself.
If we were to assume that Jigalag could potentially be the oldest, he's the oldest in that he is the most powerful, so he has had more time to develop his power. Then we could therefore say that between Jigalag and Sheogorath, would there be therefore being much younger than most of the princes. Because Sheogorath would not technically have been himself until after Jigsaw was cursed. However, I do actually have a potential answer as to who the actual youngest prince is.
Yeah.
Malakath.
Yeah, I think I would agree with that. Malakath, I mean, Meridia might
Malakath and Meridia
might be somewhat younger.
Well,
I mean,
maybe.
we've got Marin's Dagon as well.
Okay.
If we accept the idea that Magnus and Marin's Dagon are linked inextricably,
I would say that the reason I don't think Meridia is younger than Trinimac is because of the fact that Meridia was one of the Magna G.
Well, and that's the thing. It's like, is Meridunda and Meridia the same thing? Which I would say yes.
Yes.
I would say
but
yes.
At the same time,
the same way that Azura and Azura with an H are the same thing. They're two facets of the same.
Though at the same time, Meridia / Meridnunda did not go with Magnus to Aetherius, and that was before the War of Manifest Metaphors. Meanwhile, Trinimac turning into Malakath was post-Manifest Metaphor War.
Yeah.
Because he was turned into Malakath right before the Prophet Veloth led the Chimer out of Somerset.
So Silence wanted to clarify. I'm more talking in terms of being a Daedric prince, not necessarily a specific Etata. So it sounds to me that the question is more along the lines of Daedric princes specifically, and who became a Daedric prince later as opposed to earlier.
I see. It's not actually the age of their existence. It's just
when they not necessarily not necessarily their AE, but their role
from
as
when
a prince.
They actually became considered a prince.
Yeah,
in that case, I would argue that. In that case, I would argue that Malakath is likely still the youngest.
Yeah, which kind of makes sense if you think of it that way, because all the other princes don't think of him as a real prince. And anyone got younger siblings?
I am the youngest sibling. Guess what happens with me?
you don't get taken seriously, and
really don't.
You're kind of scorned and spurned, and that's a Malakath thing. So he's like the Daedric little brother, which is what.
Wow.
Little brother Malakath with his little brother ogres.
Yeah. Mom says I get to play with the Arbus now. It's my
turn. Oh, that's great.
Meridia's like, she's adopted.
She totally is adopted.
She's the redheaded stepchild.
Yeah.
And then I think Hermaeus Mora and Peri are cut from the same cloth. They're both related.
I feel like they're definitely on the much older end of the spectrum.
Because
the reason why I can see that too is the fact that I kind of feel like both Hermaeus Mora and Peri are more reflective of other Etata than the other Daedra. Like, as in they take on traits that are similar to like Akatosh and Magnus and Lorcan and that, as opposed to the other Daedra seem to have their own realms, everything that's kind of like more conceptually innate to their realms, basically. So that's another thing I can add on that.
Oh no, Silence. The annoying Jim Bro of the family would definitely be Marin's Dagon.
I kind of imagine anyone seeing
he rapidly changes between being very buff and being very fat through excessive fast food.
Well, I imagine Sean Astin in 51st Dates. He's got like the fishnet like gym top on, and he's always flexing. He's got a lisp and stuff.
God.
Oh yeah, Silence of Autumn. I have a whole thing on the Hermaeus Mora being the reflection of Magnus. I got a whole ass thing on that.
That's interesting.
Hermaeus Mora is nothing more than the mass of Akatusk's pubes.
Yeah.
Because I've operated under the
clump
assumption
of his hair. It's one of the two.
I know a lot of people like the Hermaeus Mora Akatusk thing, but I could see a lot with the Hermaeus Mora and Magnus.
So I've operated under the assumption in the last couple of years that Hermaeus Mora is leftover bits of creation that weren't actually used.
That's what I use.
Yeah. I mean, this implies ideas of time and knowledge, and that connection with time is what connects him to Akatosh. In a way, he's almost like the Malakath of the Akatusk.
Yeah.
But I also think of Perrier in a similar way because he's the shadow of Akka. Now maybe that's a young thing, and it's the shadow self of Akatosh. But I mean, I felt like that might be a different discussion for a different time.
If you think about it, like if we're gonna assume that Periite and Hermaeus Mora are the older of the Daedric princes, or Edada in general, typically the oldest or the eldest children are the ones who take after most. They basically take after their parents a little more, just because they have placed a bit of that responsibility upon themselves, as opposed to the middle child and the youngest.
Yeah.
And also on the topic of Hermaeus Mora related to not Akatosh, but to Magnus, I like to see Hermaeus Mora being a sentience that, a sapiens that derived from all of the discarded ideas that Magnus sort of just saw unfit for the Mundus, and it was just like, I'm gonna just crumple this up and throw it into the trash can, and then Hermaeus Mora just sort of became that trash can.
He's Oscar the Grouch.
Oh, that's a horrible way to look at it.
No, but think of it this way though. Like, it's not really, because it's like whenever there's this picture I saw of, like, it's some kind of artwork this person made, where it was this old guy, and he's like writing down some drafts and ideas, and he hates it and he throws it out the window. And then you see a bunch of people gathering around the window, and they're reading these ideas and they're appreciating it and they're loving it. And it's like, it technically is a creation that is made by the creator. It's literally apocrypha. Like, it's 100% a real actual thing, but it is just not canonical to the Mundus itself. But it is still connected to it, and it can still reflect the same ideas of the Mundus. So yeah, he knows everything. Well, I mean, not everything, but he knows a lot of things. They're just very they don't quite connect in the same way that lore would, that we actually know.
No.
Yeah. Oh, fun little tangent. This is something I brought up with Jonathan earlier today regarding the concept of Altmer eugenics and how it's not what you think it is. So, as I'm sure everyone who is currently in the call and everyone who is watching the video right now, yes, even you, Tom, knows what eugenics is. It's just the selective choice breeding to create desired results within a species. Most notably, within humans, the concept of eugenics would be to create a perfect society of individuals. People with the right hair, the right skin tone, the right height, the right build, etc., etc. What I brought up to Jonathan was this notion that someone on r/Tesla had come up with. That Altmer eugenics is 100% against that. They don't care about your actual genetics. Why should they? I mean, when you get right down to it, thinking about trying to make yourself physically perfect, the physical peak, is accepting mortality. It accepts that you cannot go up in the gradient, and therefore you are stuck at this gradient. So you say, well, as long as I'm stuck at this gradient, I may as well be the best of the best. And that's very much against Altmer philosophy, because Altmer philosophy is you perfect yourself so you can go up in gradients. You don't care about your actual physical being. You care about your spiritual being. You recognize that even if your soul is going to get recycled into a new body, the continuous work your soul has put towards perfection can eventually get your soul to go up in the gradients. I think it's a very interesting concept, because that means that the Altmer don't actually care about the concept of physical perfection. They care about spiritual perfection. They care about the notion that you can eventually break out of the cycle and go up in a gradient and be closer to divinity.
I feel like for Altmer, that would probably be like synonymous to them, though, physical and spiritual perfection.
I don't really feel that way, just because the Altmer, I feel in a lot of ways, like when you talk about the perfection of Altmer art and how beautiful it is, they're talking about perfection in a different way. they're talking about the emotions it elicits within you, rather than just the craftsmanship of the art piece itself. I would like to bring this. I am bringing this up because I read through the Pocket Guide earlier, Pocket Guide First Edition. Guess what the Pocket Guide of the First Edition asserts about the Altmer of Somerset?
What did it say?
The man who was writing this raunchily asserts that, oh, it's not that the Altmer don't have as many children as us. In fact, they fuck more often than us. But they kill 9 out of every 10 babies.
Oh.
Yeah, that.
Everyone wanted to hear some big propaganda?
I mean, we kind of do see
Well, I
some
think
of
I
that
do
in Somerset
remember that
already. Yeah.
Yeah.
We do
Well,
see
there's also the concept of Hulkins, too.
Yeah, like in Somerset, they do like exile anyone who's not physically perfect.
Yeah, that's what happened with the Hulkins.
It also says they don't have names.
Oh yeah, that's another thing. It's the Pocket Guide of the First Emperor of the First. Pocket Guide First Edition also asserts that they do not actually have names. Everyone is just numbered.
Yeah, I mean, in like the Somerset in ESO, we do see like them like strip people of their naming rights and their ability to like.
Jeremy is
be
moving to
people in
Virginia
society
now.
if they're not completely perfect.
He's going to be passing generally in our direction, so I'm going to try to meet him.
What was that thing you were saying? Hulkin or something?
The Hulkind is the in ESO.
No, don't describe it, but spell it for me, please.
Oh, I think it's like HULKI or KYND, like kind, child.
All right. Once again, I do need to actually play through Somerset, and I haven't gotten to it yet.
Yeah, that's a quest line in that. But yeah, the guy is cast out because he's got a facial deformity.
Which is just like one scar on his face.
Yeah.
It's ugly.
Ugly. Can't drink my wine in front of this.
Puts me off my appetite.
Well, to be fair, I've also been doing research into Praxis, and still, Bell, I continue to laugh at myself with the fact of just the last time you tried to describe Praxis to me before I started researching into it was just wildly inaccurate.
See, when I heard about it in ESO, I thought it was just like anything that's just not anything that's not a Newick.
Yeah. See, here's the thing. What I have learned as I've looked into the concepts of praxism and apraxism, praxis, in its general term, praxis just refers to tradition, but being labeled as apraxic, you effectively only get that when 2 conditions are met. 1, you have murdered someone or led to the death of someone, or have caused physical harm to a federal agent.
No, you get a lot. You can get exiled for a lot less than that.
I literally all right. There are 3 instances of praxism that I have found where we get the actual answer to it. 1 was the price of praxis, where he killed a man. 2 was the mother of rats, where her actions led to the death of, I believe, 14 people. And the 3rd was a woman assaulting an officer of the law.
There were also a bunch of others in the rat den, though, that you could talk to who would explain why they were labeled apraxic.
All right.
Yeah, there's a few in there too.
All right.
I wonder what the punishment for worshiping Lorcan in Somerset is.
See, that's the really weird thing of if you're caught worshiping Lorcan and you're an Altmer, I have this distinct feeling that they're probably just gonna think you're doing a bit or something.
Yeah, it's like, oh, you must like work for the College of Illumination or something.
I have this distinct feeling they're not going to actually take you seriously on that.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know.
And it would have to require that you.
You are playing a character in a play.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have a feeling like if you started doing that and you started like openly, you would have to like start openly preaching that before they start handing out citations to you.
I mean, they do they do take away. They don't like let you have like idols in private of any gods they disagree with, according to Somerset too. Like, you're not allowed to have like any idols to any of like any Daedra, even like
What would
Meridia.
an idol to Lorcan be? Like if you
A
if
scarab.
you were an Altmer. Yeah, it's true.
Wait, I'm sorry. What did we just decide it was?
A scarab.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I thought for a moment I thought he said spanner.
Yeah, because I was thinking of like what kind of
I was
icon
thinking,
or
like,
what kind of
wait.
like thing
I
would
have
you
an awful accent. Sorry.
No, it's fine. But the fact that it's that I thought you said spanner just makes me laugh because that also makes sense. Because you basically just threw a wrench into the plan.
The one thing I would want to point out is that how likely is it that an Altmer would worship Lorcan in the first place?
Yeah.
Because given their ideology, this is the thing that makes them Mer in the first place. And the dichotomy between man and Mer has to do with the idea of what Lorcan is. Is he a savior? Is he a trickster demon?
Okay.
What
I'm
what
gonna-
is
Lorcan did nothing wrong.
I'm gonna-
Say it, Michael.
I'm going to counter that with this. Satanism emerged in Christian nations.
That's true.
Yeah.
Okay.
That is a really good
Sure.
point.
But
So Lorcan
Wait,
worship.
hold on.
I get what you're saying, though. I really do.
But,
I really
yeah,
do.
I
I mean,
recall,
that-
didn't Satanism itself? Isn't that not even about worshiping Satan? It wasn't the
modern,
original
modern,
concept of
modern
like
Satanism isn't. No,
There's-
no. I'm
There's
being-
different Satanisms. Yeah.
Luciferianism.
being
yeah.
being a member myself.
Oh, were you really?
Yeah. I'm
Oh.
I'm a member of the Satanic Temple. Yeah.
Oh, we should
No,
chat.
Yeah.
And
I mean,
when in my last semester in Bible college, I did a presentation on Levan Satanism,
Mhm.
which was in and of itself, it was great fun because
Yeah.
I spent the entire semester torturing people with the fact that I was going to be talking about Satanism, and I'll be like, I'm going to respond as a Satanist would to this statement, and it's pretty
Yeah.
great.
Well,
But,
yeah, and I mean
I spent a lot of time studying it.
yeah. Well, for a lot of modern day Satanists, yeah, it's not about believing in Satan. Like you can find very few Satanists who actually believe in and or worship Satan.
Right.
A lot of it has, I mean, in the modern sociopolitical landscape, it's become a way to enforce proper religious freedom because, especially in the United States, there is a very heavy Christian bias in government. And I mean, a lot of this comes from like Eisenhower, who added "under God" to the Pledge of Allegiance and
Right.
made "In God We Trust" our national motto when it used to be "E pluribus unum," from many one.
Yeah.
And so the Satanic Temple exists mostly to fly in the face of that, because it is the most inflammatory way to bring attention to these issues. Oh, Oklahoma Capitol building is putting a statue of the Ten Commandments in there. Well, we're going to petition to get a statue of the Baphomet Satan on the
That
same
happened
ground.
at our state
It's-
capital too.
what was that?
That happened at our state capital too, Andrew.
Oh,
The Baphomet
okay.
statue came
Yeah.
to Little Rock for
Yeah,
a few days.
yeah, and the idea
I was so
is,
excited.
yeah, well, the idea is the First Amendment, it separates church and state, and so if you're going to value Christianity and by way of the Ten Commandments, well, then you need to also value other religions in the same capacity. Otherwise, you're showing bias, and that is not separating church and state. And so that's
I'm all on board
that's
with
the whole
it. I
point,
wanted to quit re-erecting the Ten Commandments statue. It's
yeah.
a waste
Well,
of taxpayer money.
there was that one guy who like crashed his car into it.
Yes,
Oh,
and
yeah.
I
That was
actually
pretty
work with
awesome.
someone who works with him.
Oh, really?
Oh,
That's cool.
I can't believe.
Anyway,
so Lorcan.
yeah, looping back to the lore.
Moving back to work.
The response I have to that, Michael, is that our world doesn't necessarily, people don't manifest themselves based on their ideology. So yes, Satanism may have come from Christian cultures, but people don't look the way they do, and they aren't the race that they are because of the fact that they're Christian.
So
also like saying that Lorcan exists.
Would someone preaching Lorcan in the streets of, I don't know, let's say Alinor, just start morphosing like in front of everyone? Just like
I don't.
we just start
I think.
mutating.
I think it's a little more nuanced than that.
I know. I'm just
Matthias, you were asking something. Matthias.
Who?
Oh,
I am here. Sorry.
no worries. I heard you say something, but I didn't catch it. What was it you were trying to say?
I wasn't asking anything. I was just commenting whatever.
Oh, okay. All right. But the issue I see is because Altmer, by virtue of being Altmer, they are only what they are because of their idea of Lorcan. He's evil. He's the devil. He's a demon. And he's generally bad for us.
This is what makes Veloth so interesting.
Yeah,
There could be
yeah.
some Altmer who would still worship Lorcan just like because like they feel fed up with the society of Somerset for whatever reason.
And I mean, I'm not saying it's impossible for an Altmer to find a way to worship Lorcan. I'm saying that it would be, yeah. I mean, I just think it would be incredibly few and far between, simply because of what they are.
Yeah. When you get right down to it, it's the same as the joke I've made in the past of the Malmer are the way they are because Orgdom said, "Hey guys, look, I found Glykon. Let's worship him."
I mean, I feel like it could be argued that Altmer worshipping Lorcan might be more prevalent than we think because of how oppressive the society is. That's like a type of.
Well, I mean, the thing is, Altmer.
There are Daedric cults in Somerset.
Oh, sure, yeah.
I think another thing to think of there is even in our own society, there aren't necessarily a whole lot of people who worship Satan. Yeah. My point there more being that when you have in a society a mythological figure who is presented as being evil, most people, except for like, what?
Well, I mean, in our world, there's no religion that's seriously about Satan being good. Like in Tamriel, there are plenty of religions that are like that, though.
Yeah, that there is. I mean, in proper Levan Satanism, there's the idea that while Satan isn't bad, he just wants to liberate us, or something. Like, they recognize the darkness, but they embrace the darkness. That's the idea. But they, I mean, by a way of doing that, it's almost like painting him in a good way. Because I think that.
All right, here's a different concept. The very strange people who make who decorate their houses with Nazi paraphernalia and believe that Hitler did nothing wrong.
Oof.
Yeah.
Oof.
That's kind of one of the things there. Like, as Andrew was pointing out, yeah, there might be some, but in that same regard, it's few and far between.
Yeah, I mean, because it becomes a matter, at least with the Altmer, back in an Elder Scrolls context, it's no longer just about doing mental gymnastics. You're now doing pseudo-biological gymnastics. How do you reconcile your racial worldview, the worldview that makes you who you are?
Yeah, and if we assume that the Dreamsleeve does indeed recycle your soul into a new body, and your soul carries with it everything that you are and have been with every successive life you've had, then your core beliefs would likely, at least in tests, be a core belief of your soul. Like, if within your core beliefs you recognize Lorcan as this evil, malicious entity, then the moment you're born, you're probably much more likely to agree with that. And yes, I recognize culture is not genetic, it is learned. That's exactly how culture works.
In real life.
In real life. But in tests, where ideology is skin and ideology becomes your soul definitely has much more of a say on what you believe.
Yeah, absolutely. Your opinions are what make you who you are. I always praise this thing. John Burnson, he's one of the other admins in the Dreamsleep. He wrote this fantastic piece about a Thalmor researcher trying to investigate the relationship between ideology and skin. And the whole thing is about him conducting these really vile experiments. Basically, he's forcing people to breed. And then
I read that.
then it's good stuff. And then
What?
and then modifying he's modifying their worldview, teaching them, there's at the very end there's a character who is the result of this experiment, who was born a Nord but yet could slip into Altmer society and no one would know. And so the idea is that I'm not saying I condone it. I'm saying it's a really good writing.
So this does remind me. I was also talking with Jonathan earlier about Clan Durrani. I wish Jonathan were in here. It would be great for him to be speaking.
I think we're full, so we can't even have anyone else if we want. I've been diverting people. I've been diverting people to YouTube.
As what I was speaking with Jonathan about Clan Durrani, I've often brought up also the joke of, I think it's really hilarious, the idea that the Durrani accidentally made the Bretons. It was not something that they set out to make, but rather it just kind of happened by happenstance.
In other words, they got frisky.
Yeah. So here's where I ended up expanding it today. Expanding Dong today. So one of the notions that I thought of was, well, in test, ideology is skin. And we know that, at least in the real world, when you have one culture exerting itself over a smaller culture, the dominant culture will ultimately start to bleed into the smaller culture. The practices of the dominant culture will start to expand outward, and eventually the lower what was seen as the lower culture will be a mix of the original culture those people had with the practices and customs of the dominant culture. What I think could potentially be an idea, Andrew, let me finish before you start making hand gestures.
Okay.
Stop your kinetics.
Sounds like a cat.
All right, so what I think may have been the case is that the Durrani, knowing that they were pioneers in alchemy, enchanting, and conjuration, knowing that they have very analytical, knowing that as a whole the clan had very analytical minds and were very research focused. I believe that as they were exerting themselves over the needs, that as they were presenting their own beliefs and using the needs as basically just a lower caste to do menial labor and to serve in harems, I believe that over time, the beliefs of the Durrani, their own philosophy, started to bleed into Needic culture. So you started to get Needs who had slightly more marish appearances because their souls were getting recycled, but now their souls had new ideologies being presented to them. And eventually you had the Durrani who caught this and started realizing, hey, some of these people are starting to look more like us, and it might be because we are an outside influence. What happens if we just keep doing what we're doing? And I think that could potentially have been how the Bretons actually came about. Not that they were forced to come about. Not that they were necessarily forced to come about, and that the Durrani planned for it to happen, but rather that they caught it as it was going on, and thought it would be interesting to keep going and doing what they were doing, while at the same time documenting the changes that were happening.
The nitpick I had with that is you imply that it's a one-way transfer, that the dominant culture imprints on the subordinate culture.
Yeah. And I do recognize that is not necessarily the case, even when the Romans took over places like Gaul and the Germanic tribes and the Iberian Peninsula.
Well, my mind went,
cultures there would also impress upon the Roman culture, and you would get an overall mix.
Yeah,
well, look at Skyrim, the Fourth Era.
What's that?
Look at Skyrim, the Fourth Era.
Oh yeah, yeah. I mean, my mind went immediately to British imperialism in the Victorian era, specifically with India, because yes, a lot of British customs were adopted in Indian culture, but by the same token, a lot of Indian customs are also absorbed by British culture. Specifically, the idea that curry is a British food.
Yes. However, I do have a potential retort to that. Is the fact that the Durrani were very much at that time separate from the rest of Altmeri culture. They had gone to High Rock and they had found
That's a good point.
Balfiera, and they were very separate from Altmer culture.
No.
So that's why you didn't have a whole lot of Nedic things that went back to Somerset and went into Altmer culture, because the Altmer overall weren't actually in charge of High Rock. It was one clan.
Yeah.
Like it's the same as saying like if you had the Telvanni go to, let's say, Akavir and they take over the Tang Mo, because let's be honest, the Telvanni would probably want to do that. You're not going to have Tang Mo culture bleeding into Dunmer culture purely because it's not all
an
Dunmer
isolated
going
pocket.
there. It's just one pocket of them.
Yeah, and that's a good point. Something I wanted to loop back to when we were talking about the worshipping Lorcan in Altmer society. Someone pointed out that there are Daedric cults among the Altmer.
Yes.
And I wanted to kind of address that because I think there's a common misconception that Daedra are demons and Aedra are exalted.
Angels,
and
seraphim, etc.
Yeah, and that's not necessarily the case. If you look really closely at the divines, they're just as nasty as the Daedra are.
Yeah,
there's
just
a part
they're less nasty towards their followers,
which that may have something to do with their lack of agency due to being bound to Mundus. I mean,
I would say
we look at there's a book that talks about how Stendar punished a dude and his whole family for a mistake he made.
Stendar is really brutal.
Yeah.
Oh God, yeah, no. I know what this is. This was, I think that was part of the quest of Knights of the Nine. One of the knights who was a knight of Stendar had smacked a beggar across the cheek. Because the beggar wanted coin and the knight wasn't having any of it. Immediately, Stendar curses him, and the gloves just drop down, slam on the ground. He can't pick them up. No one can pick them up. His whole family is now cursed forever with this curse that I want to say it starts draining away your life. It starts making you progressively more and more and more tired and fatigued until I think you're 30, and then you just drop dead.
I think you're trivializing a little bit what happened. First of all, the knight murdered the beggar in the Chapel of Mercy with the artifacts blessed by the God of Mercy. And I think what Stendar was wanting, this paints him in a little more sympathetic light. It's not totally justifying him, but it's a little bit better. I think he was expecting his priests then to offer mercy that would have been extremely radical given the knight's situation, but they didn't, and it sort of generationally spiraled from there. I think Stendar was sort of disappointed in his priests.
Yeah, I think one of the big problems there is a general problem with priests of the divines. Most notably, if you look at Skyrim at the Temple of the Eight Divines in Solitude, and the guy where Sam had brought up the concept of trickle-down divinity, where he was basically just saying, yes, but the beggars must help themselves as well.
Ugh.
It was horrible. And another example is Petoff, Father Petoff in Daggerfall, who warns against the woes of Dibella, for she attracts both lovers and the heartsick alike.
This is because he got rejected by a priestess of Dibella.
He didn't get that sweet ass.
And I mean, kind of to riff off of that, I'm slowly but surely working on a lore essay right now about duality in the Elder Scrolls,
Oh.
and how that manifests itself.
Duality.
Obviously, I talk about Vivek. One of my
course.
favorite points is talking about Molag Bal and how duality expresses itself in
Being a
him.
slave.
Yeah, he's a slave to his nature. He is the quintessential
Dan's
master
not here.
and the quintessential slave. But things like Dibella. I mean, Atada. I'm of the mind that it's kind of silly to always differentiate between Aedra and Daedra. That is a choice that they
Mara
made.
has nothing on the ballot.
What's that?
Nothing, just a random comment.
Okay.
Honestly, I still think that with the Aedra Daedra component to it, once again, I will reiterate, dichotomy is dumb, that it's always tripartite, because the third group there would, of course, be the Magna G.
Yeah.
Like, if you were to ask me
Which
the
you
actual
know almost
differentiation
nothing
between
about.
them...
Or Lorcan.
Yeah, kind of. My
Because-
actual differentiation there between them is that the Aedra are the people who willingly gave up power to make Mundus. The Daedra chose not to give up power, and the Magna G just followed their father.
Yeah. That's a good point.
So that's
the
another
point,
thing. Like
hold
the
on.
Daedra are the ones who specifically chose not to give up power and to instead stay within Oblivion and shape their own mark. Meanwhile, Magnus chose not to give up power, but rather than stay in Oblivion, he effectively left reality entirely.
He yeeted himself out of reality.
Well, my point was that the Daedra worshipping isn't necessarily against an Altmeri ideology, whereas Lorcan, who is the crux of this dichotomy in Man and Myr, that is absolute. If in most cases, with the exception being the Red Guards and the Dunmer, and I mean maybe Argonians and
Bosmer
Khajiit.
are a bit of a different.
That Bosmer are different?
Yeah, they don't want to go back to the Dawn era, to how things were.
Yeah,
they like the now.
Yeah, they like being stable and not shaking.
I haven't.
Now, all right. In defense of that, technically, most Altmer don't want to go back to the Dawn era either. They just want to get out of mortality.
They want the power. They don't want,
They don't want non-linear time.
Yeah.
They just don't want to be stuck in this gradient anymore.
Man, I feel like that's not really. I still don't think
There
that's
is a text
Myr belief.
in
That's really
ESO. I have
Altmer
to
belief
find it.
specifically.
Hold on. Jack, say that again.
I think that's not. I think that's still just an Altmer belief specifically because I don't think like any of the other Myr races really.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. I'm not saying that the other Myr races carry that belief as well. What I am specifically saying is that I don't believe that that Altmer want to break everything and shove everything back into the Dawn era. I think they do just want to leave. They want to get away from everyone else.
Well, I think it comes down to what is Mundus? Is it a good thing or is it a bad thing?
Yeah, and that's a
point
point of perspective.
And I think of the Altmer as the quintessential Myr. They are the closest thing to the Aldmer that we have.
The Narma would disagree.
No, we don't know enough about the Mariner to really.
I'm making a joke. Sorry.
I will say, Jack, for stating that Altmer are the closest to the Aldmer, watch Lorecast number 15, wherein I almost cried while I was giving an explanation. A very quiet explanation, mind you. No one else was talking, but it was bringing up very powerful emotions in me just through the thought of through the empathetic thought of being part of a culture that loses so much.
It was moving.
Do you want to talk about once? Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh God! Why are you bringing up once?
I want to.
Go ahead, Matthias, and then I'm gonna make a couple more points.
Matt, it's okay.
Matt, sorry.
I'm going to post a link to a lore book in chat. It's very brief, and I want you guys to read it. It talks about Altmer and stuff.
Okay, I'm going to read it aloud for those of you playing the home game. This is a brief letter to an All-Dark by Kinlord Astanamo. It says, All-Dark, water is yours to command with this eldritch chalice. It is especially useful when used to honor Anu, who shaped the cosmos in the Dawn era, and Ifre, the Earthbones. Scarcely should we credit those who claim we were better off in the time of trading body for root or root for limb. I, for one, am grateful to wake each day as the same in both thought and form as the day preceding. I digress, as you doubtless recall our history, and this letter, as brief as it may be, is written only to describe the ways of the chalice within the shrine. Dip the chalice within the shrine's waters. Pour the water on the unclean to wash away the filth. Visions you shall see, as though impurities are washed from your eyes. Water from the chalice calms chaos. Drink from it when you feel the stirring deep within you that comes only from consuming improperly prepared food. Be sure to visit both sides of the shrine. Please accept the chalice with my appreciation. In the name of Mara, may the food of life continue to pump within your breast. Signed, Kinlord Astanama the Penitent.
Water is memory.
I think it was more like about the second line, about like we should
Yes,
credit those.
the second paragraph.
Yes.
Yeah.
Scarcely
Which-
should we credit those who claim we were better off in the time of trading body for root or root for limb.
Well, specifically the part I'm noticing is I, for one, am grateful to wake each day as the same. That sounds like stasis to me.
Mm.
Yep.
Yeah. That really
You
does
have
sound like
Lorcan to
stasis.
thank for that.
I think the bigger thing is that if you were to leave this gradient of mortality, and go up in the gradients where you reach divinity, and you're still in a sense of linear time, then you would even more surely wake every day the same as before.
Mm.
You wouldn't, because like as it stands right now, especially on Auradon during the events of ESO, yeah, you could wake up and it would be the same, or you could wake up and find out the Malmer are attacking your town, or that the Veiled Heritants are killing your best friend. It's one of those, I feel it can be one of those notions of, if you can reach divinity, then you can achieve what you would consider to be peaceful. Or what you consider to be peaceful, or what you would prefer to be. Because of course, yeah, you look at like the Nordic concept of Sovngarde, it's very much Valhalla. It's very much drinking, fighting, eating, merriment. It's all the things that you feel life is worth living for. And if you're from a culture where a lot of what life is worth living for is things like art, or just the knowledge that you can wake up and everything is okay, something that you desperately want to have, then moving up in the gradients and being separate from mortality, going to a point where you can't necessarily die or be destroyed, would put you at ease.
That's
That's
very,
why I
very
think,
good.
and that's why I think one of the things with the chalice pouring the water there to wipe away the grime, it's the whole thing of, it's the whole concept of water is memory. Use the memories of the past to wipe away any doubts that things were somehow better right before, but know that in the future things can still get better.
It seems kind of counter to what Altmer actually like believe in terms of believing that things weren't better in the past but can get better in the future. Like they want to return to a time when they were divine. Like, and they don't want to just keep living and experiencing the future that could
Yeah,
be,
the Ultimate
be
from
immortal.
that text is an exception.
Yeah.
At least how I got it.
Yeah.
Though of course, the concept that the past was better. I think another thing there is that it's specifically talking about non-linear time.
Yeah, I was gonna say that.
Like
the
that
past.
text is specifically talking about the Dawn era, when things were far more insane.
Yeah.
True. Also, I didn't bring this up as a joke earlier, but I do want to point out, just because it's funny to me, the Malmer believe that they're the most pure descendants of the Aldmer, and the Altmer are the mongrels.
Wow.
Yeah, it's really weird.
Yeah.
Once again, thanks King Orgnum and Glykon.
Something I want to point out about this, and how it seems to look on the Dawn era in a negative light. I think, and this is part of a duality thing. You cannot have chaos without stasis. If you have chaos continually, is that not a form of stasis? It's constantly changing. It is constant. There it is. It's statically changing.
But I think another thing there is that it's constantly changing occasionally.
Yeah, but see, the thing here is when you take all that constant change and then you solidify it in Mundus, there's now a difference between those two. Get rid of Mundus, and this chaos that was the dawn, that's now stasis because we don't have a real stasis to compare it to. See what I'm saying?
Yeah.
This was actually a big argument of mine a while ago. That
that's where I got this.
Oh, is it? That
yeah. Oh, yeah.
There really is that within Mundus there really is no change. Everything is stasis. What appears to be change is just a static sense of, well, chaos, really.
It's both.
And that true revolution has not been seen in the Mundus.
Static change, if you will.
Yeah. So and this is something that's informed my idea that Anu and Padme, they are two sides of the same being. Anuiel Asithis, they are two sides of the same being. Akatosh and Lorcan, two sides of the same being.
What's the term? Chiral opposites.
Yeah, chiral opposites. Yeah, that's exactly.
Oh, by the way, I am sorry if I go quiet for a bit. I have decided, you know what? I'm just gonna go into Shimmerine and do the fucking quest already.
Okay.
I am also because I'm going in here and I'm going to tell you how many people in the Waterworks give me their reason.
Yes,
I demand
Matt.
their reason.
Yeah, Matt.
You were pretty much paraphrasing what Vivek says in lesson 21. I posted it in the chat.
Let's say, quote Vivek. The spokes are the 8 components of chaos, as yet solidified by the law of change. Static change, if you will. Something the lizard gods refer to as the striking. Is that exact egg cracking? That is the reptile wheel, coiled potential, ever preamble to the never action.
Basically, time is static change. You can have one without the other.
Yeah. And this is an idea I've mentioned in test lore too. That they're just
sorry.
That these apparent opposites, these chiral opposites, they're really just two parts of the same idea. You can't have time without space, and vice versa. You can't have darkness without light. They necessitate each other, but are also their own opposites. So there's a lot of that in the Elder Scrolls. So that's something I'm trying to explore in my lore essay that I've been working on for months now. I come back to it a little bit every now and again.
Good man.
Yeah, dynamics are pretty much
doing God's work.
Dynamics are pretty much the key, and that's why maybe is one of the most important words in the Mundus.
Because then that turns it into a triangle.
Yeah, it's a Venn diagram of maybe.
Yeah.
In the middle.
There was a question I wanted to get to. Silence asked earlier on the topic of dream sleep recycling souls. Would you be recycled as the same race? Like, would an Altmer reincarnate as an Altmer always?
No.
I don't think
see
Matt,
no. Matt says no. But
definitely not.
Yeah.
I've got counterpoints to that.
Argonians, maybe.
Oh,
yeah, Argonians come back as Argonians.
Once a lizard, always a lizard.
That's one of my points.
That's because the Hist.
The Hist have their miniature dreams live.
Exactly. Yes, the Hist are their own. It's like a CCTV network, closed circuit television. They're constantly, it's separate from everything else.
I mean, here's my thing about that though. I don't think that necessarily any race is going to be that any race just is born with an inherent belief system in yes, in like TES.
I did see that, and your reference to that Craglorn quest with the Khajiit who was raised by Orsimer, and he sounds like an orc.
I mean, Rothgar.
Or Rothgar. What did I
Yeah.
say? I said Craglorn.
Craglorn.
Yeah, Rothgar.
We've been on a Craglorn kick it lately.
Yeah. Well, I get those two confused all the time.
I need to do that.
Crags and mountains, yeah, whatever.
Hey, fellas.
Yeah, it's a really interesting quest.
That quest is really good, Michael. You'll love it.
Yeah.
Hey, fellas. I have a wonderful thing we should bring up because this is the question that I brought up to both Belle and Andrew this week.
Is it Tigger?
Oh yeah.
Tiggers are wonderful things.
Oh yeah.
The question, the idea in question is as follows. I've kind of combined this into two because both Andrew and Belle have answered, or at least I know Andrew has answered both of these in response to me asking them. Let's say the Altmer want to truly leave Nirn. They want to leave Tamriel, leave Nirn, leave the Manish races. I'm going to present all of you with two concepts. I want you to give me an answer of yes, they could, or no, they couldn't, and then an explanation as to why. The first concept. The Altmer can leave Nirn by carving out their own plane in Oblivion and living there. Option B. The Altmer can leave Nirn by creating a new planet within the Mundus and staying there and preventing men from coming to that planet.
Well, I mean, wouldn't the planet still be in the Mundus?
Yes, it would.
I mean, I think the first one is more probable, though on a small scale.
Yeah, the first one we do have like the Soul Cairn as proof that it could happen.
Yeah.
I mean,
let's see.
Or even better, Mankar's Paradise.
Created.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yep.
Yeah.
There are
I thought
plenty of
Numidium
examples
killed all
of
the
mages
Altmer.
creating.
It is a sadness.
Numidium does at landfall, yes.
Oh,
kill
so
all
there
the
you go.
Altmer.
That's what happens to them.
Well,
Shut up.
but then we've got the love letter, and then that's diverted, and
And that's why I brought him back in my Codeverse because I had to.
yeah.
I had to do it.
Now, when you asked me that, Charlie, you didn't tell me what the ends were. You asked. You asked. Nope. You asked me, could the Altmer create their own plane in Oblivion?
All right, I'm terribly sorry.
I said sure, why not? But creating their own plane in Oblivion wouldn't get them what they want, which is their the severing of their dependence on linear time and the affinity that Mundus creates.
Oblivion has much looser physics than Mundus.
Sure, yeah, but also, by the creation of Red Mountain, time is now linear. Yeah, it's a little more loose in Oblivion, but it's still there. Mundus is the hub of the wheel. That's the center of all things. It anchors everything.
Yeah, Oblivion's Jeremy.
I don't know that I would agree with that. With Oblivion being more mutable, I guess, for lack of a better word.
Actually, I have an idea. The notion of creating a new planet within the Mundus to escape men. The reason I feel that could be a good idea is because then they can focus entirely on attempting to escape mortality, rather than having to constantly deal with the races of men who every 800 or so years feel the need to take over everything again.
What's that you're trying to say, Matt?
Well, I mean, like, I don't know, pick a Daedric realm. When you go to the Deadlands, it's more or less going to be Mehrunes Dagon's way all the time. Nothing mutable is going to really change that.
Matt?
Same for the other Daedric realms.
So make a new realm.
You can, but that realm, I don't know that we have much evidence of realms changing.
Hold on. Matt had a point to make, I think. He's getting drowned out.
Me?
Yeah.
I was just going to say that
I think you're.
fucking nature and time in their realms.
I think your
End
internet
of
was cutting out
the-
there.
Mine,
Yeah.
it's kind of bad.
Yeah. So we
I
caught
feel-
snippets of what you were saying, but I couldn't really make sense of any of it.
Solidarity from Australia.
Are you listening to me now?
Yes.
Okay. All I was going to say is that we have plenty of examples of Daedric princes changing time in their realm or other laws which would be fixed on Mundus.
Yeah. Yeah. Which
I mean, even what's his name? Even Haskell from the Shivering Isles says that.
Yeah.
That time doesn't exist in the Shivering Isles. All that exists is the will of Shoggorath.
yeah. Which I think might be a misnomer. Because I
Probably.
mean I rely on the notion that this is a notion that comes from Dungeons and Dragons. You know, a solid knowledge planes roll will tell you this, that the different planes, they deal with time a little differently, and so that's where I think this idea in universe that time in Oblivion is a little different, and it's dependent upon the whims of the prince. I think that these realms, they can determine kind of the ebb and flow of time. Time can move at a specific rate, whatever rate the prince wants. You could have a year happen in a mundial day if you want, but it still has to go in a linear fashion. Because these the fact that Akatosh is bound between Adamantia and Red Mountain, that doesn't only apply to Mundus. That applies to the entire Arbus. That's the whole point of Mundus, is that it was supposed to serve as an escape to the Kalpic cycle, and Lorcan said, "Hey, here's a way we can try and escape it. Let's hide in here," and then
Are
it
you
didn't
sure?
work. And it trapped. Am I
Okay.
sure that that was the intent?
I'm not sure it is that.
Because
that could have been the intent. The other option for the intent was he just wanted his own Daedric realm.
I know
and
I
he might
read
not have been
that.
strong enough to do it on his own.
I know I read that somewhere. I can't remember what the source is, but I read it somewhere that Lorcan's whole purpose, or Lorcan's Sep, whoever, it might be a Yokudan thing. The whole point was that Mundus exists as a way to avoid
The walkabout.
it's supposed to help avoid the shedding of the world skins, or Alduin eating the world. That's the idea. But it backfired, and now everyone who bought into this idea, they're now trapped. And so when the wheel turns again, they're going to be gone, and they got no choice about that. They cannot escape to the far shores. So the fact that Mundus becomes the center of the wheel, the hub, it has an influence on everything else. And so I mean, this is partially headcanon, but I think that time wouldn't necessarily have to be linear in these Daedric realms. It would just have to be. Now, if we didn't have Mundus, then these realms could do whatever they want. They could have time go backwards if they want. Like they could jump around in B series time, and we can go, move from points in a 3-dimensional axis. Time can go wherever we want it to.
In the words of Clavicus Vile, why would you want time to be linear? In non-linear time, you can do anything. Imagine, you could die before you're even born.
Yeah.
Oh wait, that's terrifying, isn't it?
I'm sorry. Wasn't the augur who said that?
Yeah, that was the augur.
Augur.
Yeah. The augur and the Sigic.
Making a bit of a tangent. We have spoken in the past about whether it's pronounced Siribane or Siribane.
I hate Siribane.
I'm talking with Talarian right now, and guess how he pronounced it.
I hate Siribane. I hate that so much.
It sounds so anime.
Well, yeah, it does. Pokemon. I also hate how Nerevarine is pronounced.
Oh, God.
And I'm pretty
Those
sure that's not
rationing
Schick's
grades.
doing. Lawrence, don't do me wrong, man. But no,
I should
I
say
am not.
that you do have poke bowls in Hawaii, so it's I don't know, it's like Pokemon.
Poke is fucking delicious.
It is.
I will say, I like to get it in a
There's
little.
a poke house that's
I
like a mile from me.
I like to get it in a little nori wrap. Oh,
Oh,
so good.
nice.
I was
so
that
good.
I was that dumb bastard that kept calling him Poke forever.
Oh, God.
On.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm not convinced that's Sirabane. I don't care what ESO says.
By the way,
Sirabane,
speaking with
just-
Galarian, I love the fact that the Altmer don't call it a sewer, they call it a vaulted house Oriole, because it sounds prettier. Because let's be honest, it does sound prettier. Sewer is a very ugly word.
There was another thing I wanted to talk about. Oh shit, did I lose it? Oh yeah. Okay. So you mentioned how, could the Altmer create another world to get away from men?
Yes.
But that's not their end goal. They don't want to get away from. They don't care about the men.
No. The point of the planet is not to reach not that the planet is their end goal, but rather that the planet will help towards their end goal, because it takes them away from any equation with men.
Because regardless of their distance from between them and men still exist, which means Mundus will still exist.
Yeah, that
Yes.
Because it is
But
men.
you don't necessarily need to get rid of the Mundus. You just need to get out of its influence.
You'd still be in it if you're
But
there, though.
if you're in the wheel at all, you are influenced by the Mundus. And so,
All right. Let's think about it another way. Do they necessarily care about the Mundus, or is it just about getting to divinity, where it's more that mortality will no longer be effective?
They want to get back to that time. At least this is the Thalmor perspective, which is like as far mer as you can possibly get.
Alt-right mer.
Yeah. They want to get away. It's not about Mundus. They don't care about Mundus. They care about what Mundus does to the Arbus, and they want to get back to that point where they existed in an infinite and timeless capacity.
Yes.
So
here's
it's
another
not
question.
hold on. It's not exactly that they're always changing. It's that they are forever. They can change continually because they're infinite. Why wouldn't they? But they don't have to.
No.
And so hold on, not done.
Sorry.
And so Dawn, that they see time as a negative thing. This linearity of time, it's restrictive and it binds them, and they don't like being constricted. Whereas men, they see that as, well, hey, now we can focus and we can now go and do things, and we can pay attention to what we're doing. We can live our lives, and we can feel love and pain and joy and happiness and sadness. We can do all these things. We can stop and smell the roses. They cherish the temporary, whereas elves, they see that as why. Actually, there's a good book in Morrowind, written from the perspective of a Dremora, and I think this is actually kind of a good thing. It says, you'll die. Why do you not despair?
Is it Spirit of Nirn?
No, it's from
Spirit of the
Daggerfall.
Daedra, I think.
Now, that actually brings up a very interesting point.
from
The concept
Battlespire.
that
Is it from
even most
Battlespire?
Altmer...
Okay.
I think so.
Okay, because I know
even-
I've read it in Morrowind, so it might have crossed over.
I feel that brings up an interesting concept. Even most Altmer don't necessarily despair about the fact of knowing that eventually they will die.
Yeah, which is why
They
I pointed out
distract
that's a
themselves
Salmore
by-
kind of thing.
Yeah, they distract themselves by perfecting their crafts. When you get right down to it, the reason Altmeri crafts are so incredible is because it's not just the knowledge of one person, it's the knowledge and techniques of multiple generations. There's a book in ESO written by a Bosmer jewelry smith And keep in mind, it's a Bosmer jewelry smith, so he mostly makes things out of bone. And when he was talking about Altmer jewelry crafting, he was talking about the pride the Altmer take in their family's lineage and history. He brought up that no, it's not a case that you can't find an Altmer who will teach you how to make jewelry. The problem is that you can't find an Altmer who won't go on for hours about some technique their great-great-granduncle came up with.
So basically, the Altmer, what's the word for it? Where they hone their craft, basically, over multiple generations.
Yeah.
It's kind of like a manifestation of their existential dread.
Yeah.
I like that.
You keep that craft going because you know that while you can die, you can at least make something that will last forever.
Yeah, it's a legacy.
And I feel that's another reason as to why you can, like, aside from the age thing, and this is something that I might just bring up later, I feel that could be a reason as to why, like, ultimately, in a lot of cases, an Altmer craftsman is going to be whose family has made or done a specific craft for generations, is ultimately going to be better than someone who is, like, self-taught. Like, an Altmer fisherman who comes from a family of fishermen, well, it's likely that over at least tens or hundreds of generations, his family have been fishers. They have perfected that craft. So if you were to have a competition between an Altmer fisherman and some random guy from Falkreath named Dave, Dave probably isn't going to win.
Is it Maroon's Dave?
Is it Maroon's Dave?
Maroon's Dave.
I mean, Grub is a pretty good smith as an orc.
I think it depends on where you are.
It
Charlie.
definitely does depend on where you are.
Like you put them both in the Shivering Isles and tell them to catch a fish. You don't know what's going to happen.
Exactly.
That's a really good point.
Hey everybody, Johnny here.
Hey, Johnny.
I've just been lurking, eating Chinese food mostly, but still lurking. But I had a question.
Yeah.
So the endeavor of the Altmer is to return to obviously where they were before existence on Mundus or whatever. Is that the same as the Sijic endeavor?
No.
Well,
No. Let me find my old write-up. I did a write-up years ago about the Sijic Endeavor.
The Sijic Endeavor is lore
themselves. They've also separated themselves from traditional Altmeri culture.
The Sijic Endeavor is about reaching the final subgradient and then going past that.
okay, so alright, forget the Sijic endeavor then. If they were to just achieve Chim but then zero sum, would that be close to what they want?
Probably not.
Well,
I would say no, because one of the things is, like, zero summing basically just takes you out of existence, correct?
You just nope. And
You just know about it.
You just nope. That isn't necessarily what they want either. They don't want to just not exist. This isn't drinking Void, the greatest energy drink ever, that just makes you not exist. This is a matter of, I want to exist, but I really don't want to be tied down by mortality anymore.
Well,
they want to go back to the state of Anatada.
Well, and not to mention that Kim and zero summing are mutually exclusive too. Because you achieve both through the same process. And both are to the point of getting Kim.
Most people aren't badass enough to get Kim.
Yeah, and once you understand Kim, and I've explained this a few times in other places, but I'll explain it again. My understanding of Kim, and this is in no way an official explanation. This is just how I understand it. If we assume that the Arbus takes place in a dream, we've got the Godhead, which is a Hindu concept. The Godhead, we're all being dreamt right now. We are figments of imagination.
There's plastic spoons underneath, Michael.
Then
that's what I believe.
I had to mute him.
Speak into an
I
existence
wasn't
with just
hearing
just
anything.
plastic spoons underneath.
So everyone within the Arbus. This includes Ada. So Daedra. This includes Magna-Gi. This includes everyone in Tamriel. Everyone not in Tamriel. All these people, all these entities, are figments of this dreamer's imagination. That means they are a part of the dreamer. So you've got the entire psyche of this one individual being split into a billion parts. And sure, even yeah, absolutely, it exists within the Arbus, so it would have to.
It can leave. Go.
Nope, because there's the only way you can leave the dream is to go to a different dream, which suddenly you're not in this dream and it's irrelevant.
Okay.
So
Not gonna get into track of you.
So if you zero sum, you're still a part of the Godhead.
No.
Hold on. I'm still trying to describe Kim here.
Okay.
So when one person realizes their connection to the Godhead overall, oh, I am 1/1000th of the Godhead. That means in some way, I am the Godhead.
1/1000th of infinity is infinity.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. So I like to use the phrase synecdoche, which is a poetic term for a small part standing in for the whole. You will die by my hand. My hand isn't killing you. I am. But the hand stands in for me. It is a representation. You become a synecdoche of the Godhead. You are the Godhead by rights because you recognize that connection. So now you realize, oh, I am the Godhead. This is my dream, which then necessarily means that you are everyone else too. I am, all are we. That's Kim, symbol of royalty. Whereas to zero sum is to approach that conclusion to say, oh, I am part of this dream, and it stops there. I'm in a dream. I don't exist.
And then you just
There you go. I've called this a literal brain fart. You fart cloud out of existence. That's what it is. You are forgotten. You're gone. You have rejoined the Godhead. You've been reabsorbed by. What's that?
I think someone is breathing pretty heavily on their microphone.
It's not me.
Me? No.
Somebody. It's all right.
I don't know. I'm currently in ESO, so I can't chat.
Vapors.
But that's the idea. So you come to a realization, I'm not real. How do you react to that? Do you say, fuck you, yes, I am real? No matter what logic says? Boom, there's Kim. I am not real, therefore I'm not real? Well, I'm gone. That's
Septimus Sigma.
Yeah.
Oh, poor Septimus. He knows you can know.
Andrew, how many Kimsters do we see in the span of the test games running around? I know Talos and Vivek. Are there others?
Maybe what third one?
Floating around, rather.
You could argue Jubal.
Yeah.
But I mean, we're getting really, because people aren't necessarily convinced that Vivek even has Kim, or that Talos has Kim.
Because
yeah, I'm one of those people.
yeah. This, I mean, this is. Go ahead, Matt. Matt, what were you saying?
I wasn't.
So, I mean, there's the idea that Jubal gains Kim, and that Jubal is also the Nerevarine. And I mean, yeah, and I can cite a couple things. I mean, this has to do with
cutting his both hands.
Yeah. When he cut both of his hands off, that's when it happened. And then the Nerevarine thing is when he's going under for that surgery. There's a moon in one eye and a star in the other. And that symbolism there has to do with
Lun Sung, Luna Sol.
Oh, you specified in game, Mac. I didn't catch that. My bad.
No problem.
Yeah, I mean, the only reference we have that Vivek ever attained Kim is in the sermons, but at the same time, and the trial, but that's also out of game.
At the same time, Vivek is a known liar.
Yeah, that's kind of his thing. He lies, but he's able to exist.
Metaphorically true.
Yeah. Whereas
Take what he says with a grain of salt.
Whereas Sotha Sil says that Almalexia is the better liar because she believes her lies implicitly. Whereas Vivek recognizes his lies, and he can kind of stand in the balance between the truths and the untruths. And that's where he lives, and that's part of his duality, which I think is also really cool.
I mean, yeah, I always took like the Sotha Sil line as saying like Almalexia fully believes she is a god. Well, Vivek recognizes he is mortal, but he also believes he's a god.
Yeah.
I mean, look at the
and then the only real time that we can consider Talos achieving Kim, it isn't in game. It's from the many-headed Talos.
But it's referenced in game though, so
it is referenced, yeah. But we don't actually get the text itself. Because I mean, I guess you could say that Heimskir references it, but would I call that proof? I don't know. I think
I just really want to know what would happen in the dream if you just threw two Kimsters at each other, just forced them to interact.
It would be Anu having to write out a fight between his own self-inserts.
Well, one would be forced to make a sacrifice, is what would happen.
But the ruling king who seizes another, his equivalent, rules nothing.
Yep, absolutely.
You're gonna have too many cooks in the kitchen.
Too many cooks. Too many cooks.
Too many cooks. God, Andrew, don't remind me about that.
I would say it would be the same thing that would happen if Gandalf and Sauron decided to just say, "Okay, fine, let's go."
But Gandalf addresses that in text. He says Sauron's mightier.
But they're both Maya. That's the
I know,
trick.
but Gandalf specifically, although he's bound by the strictures of the Valar, which don't allow him to match Sauron in sport.
I don't know Lord of the Rings.
It's so
Me neither.
In other words, Michael, you're saying the continent sinks.
By the way,
it'd be bad. It would be like the unmaking of the world.
By the way, bringing up Lord of the Rings reminds me. I think it was Bell who brought this idea up, or maybe we were talking about it and I might have brought it up. But the notion of trying to explain like why exactly ESO matters if it's a prequel. Does the Silmarillion matter?
Yes.
Oh yeah. That's
the thing with the Silmarillion is that it is a lore book given to us from on high from a lore daddy. Here's what happened.
The Lord Daddy, yeah.
And I mean there are some things that are still left a little there are some things that are still left a little ambiguous, but Elder Scrolls doesn't have that. And ESO is far from being that. But there was a point I was going to make. Oh yeah, about what happens when two Kimsters meet. Assuming we accept that both Vivek and Talos attained Kim, then they did meet at one point, and that was at the beginning of the Treaty of the Armistice.
I don't think Talos had Chin yet at that point.
Oh, by the way, fellas,
that's a good point. That's a good point because he didn't have Numidium yet, and so he couldn't.
It was after the sea when
that's
all three became one.
Yeah, I guess. I guess they would recognize themselves. that would be like a Namaste moment, like
the Spider-Man meme where they're both pointing at each other.
Yes. Anyone see Enter the Spider-Verse?
Yes.
No.
Oh man. That
Yeah.
after credits scene.
Yeah.
Oh.
By the way, guys, all right.
Very rude point.
I am now within the den of rats, which means I'm now going to talk to all the NPCs and see who coughs up the information.
Do it.
Wish me luck.
Inquisitor.
Do it.
Hi, Inquisitor Charndos, asking what the hell of Apraxix is.
Leo.
You got this,
First
you got
day.
Mary Scum. I mean,
You can take a Wilson with
Give
him.
me your secrets, orc. How did you come up with the idea to put bratwurst on a bun? By the way, yeah, orcs invade hot dogs and tests.
Wow.
Of
Yeah,
course
that's my
they
favorite.
do.
Oh, they are the
Real.
They're the
Germans.
greatest.
I made a comment on Tesla the other day about how I'm pretty sure, like, I think it should be established that orcs poop cubes like wombats.
No.
Is that in addition to their multiple nipples?
Yes.
No.
Oh yeah,
That's not-
no, they got eight pig TTs.
Okay, but pooping
Uh,
cubes isn't because
all
there's
right.
a difference biologically, it's just
And
because their
then-
diet's
oh.
terrible.
So
Yeah,
this is
and then
what
the-
that video on Memospore meant.
Okay,
Alas,
so
that is not the case when my orc wears the Nord bathing towel in ESO. Alas.
okay,
that-
Get
so
over them.
That
We
is
have
what
now-
pig TTs means.
we have just started and we've already come to a problem.
Uh-oh.
This wood elf is not giving his secrets.
For those who don't know what that is.
All right, keep your
I'm not
secrets.
Okay.
All right.
All right, keep your secrets.
That's it. That's
All
it.
right, then,
All right,
keep
keep
your
your
secrets.
secrets.
All right, keep your secrets. All right, Zolbeck the
Charlie,
orc.
please draw Char and just like doing that. All right, keep your secrets.
Oh my god, I need to draw Charandos doing that.
Put him in a wagon like Frodo was.
No. I'll put him in a wagon, and it's the intro to Skyrim, but he's wearing divine prosecution equipment. All right, second
All
problem.
right, then.
I have now
This
talked
video is
to
disturbing.
Zolbeck the orc. He is also not giving me any explanation. He is merely implying that he is Aprax. Okay, hey mother of rats, I'm not gonna talk to you. Fuck off. Enals
Have you?
is an Argonian, and I can't talk to her.
I mean, all
Have you
Mother
entered
Rat
into
did is
the
forge
chat?
Mother of
an
Rats deserves a better storyline.
Have you tried entering into the chat comments to the effect that Aren is in fact a mining robot from the 9th era?
No.
No.
Wait, do you want me to put that into the game chat?
Zone
I
chat,
will.
baby. Zone chat.
Yeah, that you'll hear a secret if you do
Don't
that.
do
I
it.
heard.
It'll be bad.
I heard you get a secret if you do that.
Only in the beta,
Oh god.
alas.
Holy oh wait, never mind. All right, I found an Argonian who is playing a board game. That's the extent of him. Can't talk to that Khajiit. I'm terribly sorry. I'm literally just like running around this entire area, finding as many people as I can actually talk to.
I just
It's kind of
imagining
cool
this
that
Alan character.
non-Altmer can be a praxis.
No. That's the thing. I'm not even sure if that
No, yeah.
Argonian is necessarily apraxic. He may just
They're
be
just
living
hanging
down
out.
here.
I remember
Yeah.
there's like one Nord Aprax, I think, somewhere.
Well,
No,
I mean,
no, well, that's
the
the thing.
implication
You're-
is that if somebody's apraxic who's not an Altmer, then they could also theoretically become praxic, or
Yeah,
whatever the
because they were
opposite
kicked
is.
out.
Yeah.
They were kicked
But
out
at the
because they
same-
punched a guard, I think.
That,
Do-
or you guys are just being very rude to that Argonian. He just happens to like it down here because it's warm and wet.
Yes.
You
Also,
jerks.
That's also.
Do
Jerks.
non-Altmer
What?
Oh boy, Altmer question.
do non-Altmer who have lived in on Somerset for multiple generations, are they any more praxic than they were when they first came there?
There
Well,
is
okay,
there is a Redguard family that has lived there for generations.
I will
Yeah,
also
that's what I'm
I will
thinking of.
also say that the concept of being more or less praxic is a very weird one because in the Price of Praxis, it seems to be heavily implied that when you are labeled as praxic at on your 18th birthday, it's the equivalent in effect to saying you are now legally responsible for yourself and for your actions.
Okay.
It's
I
the
think
same
it's
as
an
like
all or nothing
here in the
thing.
US, when you turn 10, you are therefore now legally responsible for your actions.
And when you turn 11, you get your first Pokemon.
Yeah.
No, I thought you get your letter
no,
from
that's
Hogwarts.
just a really weird thing here in the U.S. If you're a 5-year-old and you break into a
Join the
convenience
physics.
store, you're not actually gonna have any punishment for that. I mean, your parents are probably gonna be pissed at you, and you're probably gonna be grounded. But if you're like a 10-year-old who breaks into a convenience store, you're probably going to juvie.
So what you're saying is we need to make a team of 5-year-olds.
9-year-olds.
What I'm saying is we need to make.
well-
Zos needs to allow us to choose the age of our characters, and we will make a group of 9-year-olds Fortnite Altmer players who yeet Molag Bal into oblivion.
Nothing they do is illegal.
Why?
Nothing I do is illegal.
No. We get someone to pose as Nick Fury. We're putting a team together. That's the five.
We're
Never
cut to a
mind.
daycare.
I expected more laughter from that. But
Oh, I laughed. I'm just muted. Sorry.
I'm ashamed of all of you right now.
Just put my mic. I'm sorry.
Hey, I can't help it if I'm Gen Z.
Oh, you Gen Zers.
Oh no. My Morrowind client.
All right,
crashed.
guys, I have great news.
That happens.
I have great news. Someone
tell
has
you?
finally given me a reason for why they're labeled as Aprax.
What was the reason?
She punched a bailiff.
Yeah, that's the one I was thinking.
Oh
of.
yeah, I remember
Yeah,
that.
no, that's the
badass.
thing. A bailiff is a federal officer. That is assault on a federal officer.
Yeah, but like, they got exiled from society forever.
At
for
least
that.
she doesn't have a giant
but that's
scar on
just
her
it.
face.
Becoming Apraxic doesn't mean you're exiled from society forever.
Oh,
Even
I
at the
love
beginning of this
so
quest.
much.
Yeah, at the beginning of this quest, Lindari specifically says that many Aprax elves work as laborers for years to be labeled as Praxic again. And in the Price of Praxis, we see another alternative to laboring for years, which is putting your Callian back together.
Yeah, but the thing is, that's just indentured servitude, though, isn't it?
Is it?
I know.
Well,
I don't
that's
think
just
that's
like
to
your
what labor-
opinion, man.
See, the way I see this is that when compare this to High Kinlord Rillis the 12th. What I think this actually is that being who just mumbled something?
That's what he sounds like the entire time you're doing stuff.
Oh God, yeah, you're right. All right, so calming everything down for a moment, I want to give this kind of explanation to it. Being labeled as Aprax is a recognition that you did a violent crime,
You did a bad.
but at least during your trial, you showed remorse for that. You showed that you actually felt guilty for it. So, rather than locking you up in a prison or a jail cell, you get labeled as Apraxic and get told, reform yourself.
I mean, the thing is, the Mother of Rats didn't do a violent crime. She just forged
But
documents.
her
and then...
crime led to the death of 43 people.
Yeah, but that was because of the actions those people took. That wasn't directly her fault.
You can say that, but let me ask you this. If someone cut the brakes on a guy's truck, and that truck then plowed into a
cutting the
school
brakes
bus,
is killing some. Like, what she did is just, like, forge a document saying, this guy's the father. That led to 43 people dying.
No. She was forging a document that said she was of royal blood.
She messed with genealogy.
She said she messed with the pattern of lineage, that's all.
It's so stupid.
Well, all right. Let's think about it in terms of like 1400s Europe or earlier.
Really though.
Yeah. Seriously, with Tess, we kind of do need to put it in that kind of mindset a lot of times. In, let's say, like the 1300s in France, if you forged documents that stated that you were of royal blood and tried to assert that, and you had an entire group of people backing you up, and then another entire group of people who said, no, that's fucking bullshit, and they have a war, and 100 people die during that war, who is responsible for that war?
The forger.
Realistically, it is your fault because you started everything. That war would not have happened if you hadn't forged those documents. And then you get beheaded, as is custom.
As is custom. To the guillotine.
to the guillotine with you. We also have another guy we gotta kill, so we'll hang him. But shit. Have I ever showed you guys that picture? I am terribly sorry that I'm somewhat scatterbrained right now, but have I ever showed you guys the picture of the guillotine?
Yeah.
So it's the guillotine is set up that has a levy system between the heavy blade and a noose that is then pulled across and hung like a few feet away. You put the noose around some guy's neck, and you put another guy in the guillotine, and then when you drop the blade, the noose will also yank up on the other guy. It's quite efficient.
I just have I just have a few things to just talk about, about the people in Mother's Den.
All right.
So first of all, yeah, I feel like you're actually kind of right about that lineage thing. But also, there are a few people that imply that you can become an Aprax just by talking to other Apraxes and acknowledging them.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing. He's kind of first off, we should also take into consideration the guy who says that as an orc, and that is not me bashing on orcs.
No,
that is me seriously
Bosmer.
Considering the concept that he may not necessarily understand all that much about Altmer culture.
Yeah,
It's
I think
not
he's a Bosmer.
Yeah, he's a Bosmer.
The one talking to the Avrax? Oh, yeah, right.
No, the one that says you take a risk coming down here. If those surface dwellers find out you're talking to an Aprax, they may toss you out too.
Yeah, but that's speculation on his part, I feel. Like, I think it's one of those cases of, like, let's see. I think in Roman society, if you're just some random guy talking with slaves, people are going to think you're kind of weird, but they're not necessarily probably going to cast you out of society. They just probably won't want to hang out around you because you're that one weirdo.
Well, but if you're talking to people who are murderers and stuff like that, they might start to believe that you're like collaborating with them for
But at the same time, while some people may believe that, legal action probably wouldn't be taken against you until like you can actually find proof of something illegal going on that you're involved with.
Yeah.
But you would not be labeled Aprax just because you know these people. You'd be labeled Aprax if they find out that you supplied these people with hundreds of barrels of black powder so you could blow up the British Parliament.
Yeah, but like you would be a first suspect, basically.
Yeah, you'd be a first suspect, but at the same time, the Altmer judiciary system has never really seemed, at least from stuff I've seen in the past. Again, I've just now stepped into Somerset. It's never seemed exceptionally biased. It does kind of seem more like they do actually care about the evidence.
I mean, they also do still exile children who have scars on their face.
Again, I haven't gotten to Lilindril yet. I'm sorry.
Yes, you gotta hurry up and finish Somerset.
Shut up.
I'm surprised you've been able to keep yourself from it. When Elsewhere comes out, I'm not doing anything else.
Well, let me put it to you this way. I feel incredibly guilty about doing Mother of Rats or Tale of Two Mothers right now.
Because you're talking to an Apraxic?
It was the best of times. No. It was the worst of times.
I feel incredibly guilty about this because on this character, I haven't gone through the entirety of the Dominion. I haven't finished the main quest on this character. I haven't done the 2/3 of the Daedric storyline.
What have you done?
Before this? Well, I've been playing through the Dominion right now. Yeah, I'm almost done with Grotwood on this character. Keep in mind, I've also been having school this semester, so that's been fun.
Just drop out.
Fuck you.
Just drop out.
That escalated really quickly.
Just drop out. No. Too much money has been spent.
I think
he's a high elf. He can't drop out of school.
Listen, Charlie. I went through high school, or not high school. I mean, I went through high school and college, and it got me nowhere. So I'm just gonna save you the trouble.
I think Schick is moving to Ireland here pretty soon.
Yeah, he is. They had their last little dinner thing.
They'll stop invoking the ghost of Kenji. To everyone else, Kenji is a friend of mine who he truly means the best. But I am not kidding when I say that he has stated that I need to change my degree to a STEM field or go to a trade school. And when I asked him why, keep in mind, with my life, I want to be a teacher. His response was, "You're never going to get a job because of affirmative action."
What?
Whoa.
And I was just thinking, like, that is exactly not how it works.
That is not how it works.
So, Belle, don't bring up the ghost of Kenji.
Oh my god.
Wow, that's really disturbing.
Yeah, it is.
Woo!
No, follow your passion.
Yeah,
Yes, I
I'm
agree.
saying I
Do
want to
it.
be a teacher. This is why, first off, I might change my major to anthropology because I'm loving it.
Mm. Oh,
Honestly,
anthropology is
though,
amazing.
If you
Second,
do,
I am
fun.
definitely I definitely want to get a minor in film and in history because I want to go back to my old high school and be a teacher.
That would be
honestly, though,
amazing.
even if you are a teacher, like you're still making more money than most people are
Yeah,
that are.
and it's
So-
stable.
Yeah, and I think one of the other things there is that I want to say it was my history teacher, or not my history teacher, my economics teacher senior year. She brought up the concept that like, hey, if you want to be a teacher, that's great. Do teachers get paid that much? Not really. Is it enough to sustain one person? Yeah.
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 It might not be
Yeah.
enough to sustain a family, but it is enough to sustain one person.
That's why my wife
All you
works
need
in
is
X-ray.
sustenance.
As I actually did my first sub job yesterday. That was
Nice.
cool.
X-ray
Yeah.
is good though.
Yeah. Oh, my wife makes a shit ton of money.
That's awesome.
Get yourself a sugar mama.
Yeah, so I had my first substitute teaching job yesterday.
Oh, congratulations.
for you.
Thank you. Funnily enough, it was in the exact same classroom where I did my student teaching.
Well, there you go.
It was totally a fluke too. Like,
That works pretty well then.
yeah. And so the kids were all kids that I knew and were familiar with, and yeah, it was a nice entry into substitute teaching. It's like it scares the shit out of me.
Yeah. Very
Dealing with kids I don't know and in disciplines that I don't understand, and I'm an English and history guy. You put me in a chemistry classroom, I got no idea.
So
Going to be reading
my-
the textbook today, class.
So my wife Karen actually went to school to be a teacher, and she did a lot of substitute teaching. And most of the time, they leave you a pretty detailed.
Most of the time.
Most of the time. And on the times they don't, it's study hall.
Yeah.
Not for you. What did you do when you didn't know? Karen made up the lesson plans, but that's because Karen is awesome.
Yeah. Well, it's hard to come up with lesson plans on the fly. I've tried
On the fly, yeah.
and it sucks.
Well, especially music, but she did
yeah.
a lot of music substitute teaching, but she was a musician. Yeah.
Well, without knowing scope and sequence and where you're sitting in a curriculum, like
yeah, it's tough.
Are we on the American Revolution? Like, what are we talking about? Right? I don't know.
Oh, by the way, guys. Oh.
I would talk about Elder Scrolls. No, I'm kidding.
I would.
Right after this quest, I am going to go do the Hulken's Heart, so I can get a better understanding of what Hulken is.
Excellent.
Okay, so should we talk more about lore?
Yeah.
We should always talk more about lore.
About
what the fuck are you talking about? Old-fashioned root beer lore.
Silence, have we exhausted your list of questions? Not yet.
Never.
Okay.
What's another one? Can you go talk about something else, though?
Yeah. Matt, do you have one?
Okay. Hold on.
Because I don't think we've had you in a cast yet. So, I mean,
this is my first time doing this.
Yeah. So, awesome.
Ask your questions.
Then you get. This is dedicated to you as well.
Oh God.
Oh yeah.
Oh God.
An appropriate response.
I get nervous. No, but you were previously talking about the Kalpic cycle.
Yeah.
And I said I disagreed with you quite a lot.
Yep.
And I did write on the chat.
I don't know if I saw
my thoughts
that.
on it. Yeah, I'm going to post again.
Okay. Can't waste any of that mead.
Oh, hey guys, here's an idea.
Mm-hmm.
Talking with an Aprax won't get you labeled as an Aprax, it will get you probably labeled as an ouster.
Yeah, that's what we were talking about.
In other words, you're that one weirdo.
Yeah.
You know the one. That one guy down the street. who eats cereal while peeking out his window at other people's barbecues.
Amazing.
Okay, so Matt says, my understanding of the Kalpic cycle, Aka, Ariel, whatever you want to call him, created the concept of time, which previously didn't exist in the Gray Maybe. Linear time, non-linear time, higher dimensional time, what have you. Time as a dimension didn't exist before Aka did his thing, which is why Akatosh is the firstborn. Not because he is the first Etata to be born, but because he created the very first, the very concept of first and last to begin with. Linear time came later. It is a deliberate limitation of the full extent of the concept which permeates the Arbus. Linear time is a thing of Mundus. The Kalpic cycle is a Nernian mundial thing, and I would actually suggest that it benefits Aka Ariel more than it does Lorcan.
I can see that.
It benefits because it preserves the current state of the dream, the current state of things.
Sure.
As opposed to Lorcan, who ultimately wants to go somewhere else.
But I would point out that linear time is not the intended function of the time dragon. Time as a dimension is not supposed to be linear in the Elder Scrolls. It's supposed to be open and fluid. But when they at convention, when they cut down Lorcan, took out his heart, and flung it into Resdane, and it was sent cackling the whole way. Lorcan knew that would bind Akatosh. The dragon can now only travel between 2 points. That's a line. That's what creates linear time. So that is Lorcan's.
I don't.
Uh-oh.
That's a very weird thing to me to accept. I like the idea that Akatosh is coiled around the wheel of the Mundus, and he's eating his own tail, and that makes the wheel spin.
Yeah, which I think of that more as a metaphor.
Yeah,
the Ouroboros is a symbol. It's been around for thousands of years. That the snake eating its own tail. And the Kalpic cycle, I think, did exist prior to Mundus because the pre-existence of Mundus is still encapsulated within that Kalpic cycle. So
you're talking about the walkabout, but is the walkabout and the Kalpic cycle the same thing?
No, because the walkabout is a way to avoid the Kalpic cycle. That's it's moving at strange. Yeah, it's moving at strange angles. So if we've got the Ouroboros here and it's moving in this direction, well, the walkabout, you move in this direction. Now you're out here.
I expressed myself wrong. I was talking if the Satakal eating the world skin, and Alduin eating the world is the same thing, and I don't think it is.
I think
they deliberately resemble one another, but they're not exactly the same thing.
Okay. And I see that a lot of the origin myths within the Elder Scrolls, they echo each other. They are different.
Yes.
They are different perspectives of the same event. So if we look at Children of the Root, that talks about Ata and Kota and Atakota together.
Yeah.
And we look at the Yokudan perspective. We've got Satak and Akel, and they become Satakal. We've got.
But I don't.
Go ahead.
Yeah, but I don't think Satakal and Alduin are a one-to-one comparison.
No, I don't think so either, because I think someone got their perspective wrong a little bit. And so it's the same event, yes, but whether Alduin and Satakal are the same thing, I don't think.
Satakal is the Arbis.
I mean, Yeah, I mean, well, and the thing with metaphor is that metaphor makes manifest. If there's a metaphor for something, it exists in a literal fashion. Alduin is the literal world eater. He puts it in his mouth, he chews it, he swallows it, and then he goes back for more.
He's the end of time, literally.
He eats the world and ends time. That's the result.
And I think that's
Alduin is Akatask's tiny poops.
Yeah. Now whether Satakel or Satakal, excuse me, may be the culmination of the Akatask. So where the Nords see Alduin, the Yokudans see the time dragon as a whole instead of just Alduin. See what I'm saying? So I mean, they're the same, but they're different. And Silence said something in chat. Well, on the topic of Kalpas, I have Harbinger's question. What separates the Kalpa from the dream? Does the dream reset with each Kalpa? For example, the dream begins anew, or does the dream continue and just the part of it that is the Arbus resets? And would a different dream, like Akavir, still function on a Kalpic cycle? I have some ideas about this, but if you have an idea...
I have some.
Yeah, you go first.
Me?
Yeah.
I think people conflate a lot of concepts because when people talk about okay, bye, Jack.
Oh, Jack leaving.
CA. I'm gonna see you.
When we say that, I think that because we tend to explain the Arbis as being the Elder Scrolls universe, and then we explain the Kalpic cycle as being, the timeline ending and beginning anew. People tend to assume that the Kalpic cycle affects the whole Arbis, and then start making connections between it and a potential cycle of dreams. And I don't think they are quite the same. I think they are maybe echoes of each other. I mean, there's a cycle of Kalpas in the Mundus, just like there is a cycle of dreams on a much wider scale. But I think people conflate the two concepts. So no, I don't think the Kalpic cycle affects the dream at all.
And I agree with you there. I think dreams and Kalpas are very different concepts because a dream implies a singular mind. If we have a different dream, we have a different mind, or at least a different train of thought within the same mind. So the Kalpic cycle, that's something that, so we have our dream, the Kalpic cycle takes place within that dream. If we have another dream out here, there's no reason that this Kalpic cycle over here needs to affect this dream. It doesn't, there's no connection. So if we take, and I largely operate on the theory that I wrote a few years ago, the lens of perception. That is my base point. I believe that Akavir and Yokuda exist in different dreams and therefore different minds, and we have three people we're dealing with. We have the one that I ascribe as Ald Amaranth. That's where Yokuda is. We have Tamriel in Anu's dream, and then we have Jubal's dream of Akavir. And just because Kalpic cycle exists within Anu's dream, that's within his mind. His thought processes and his way of dealing with his own emotions and thoughts, that doesn't say anything about the other two. Yokuda may have its own way of dealing with emotions and thoughts and processes, and so does Jubal. Now, they may be connected in the fact that Jubal was raised in Anu's dream. There's going to be some overlap there at some point. But the Kalpic cycle exists within the confines of one mind. There's no reason that it should cross over to another. And every dream does not necessarily need a Kalpic cycle. Other dreams may have them, sure. That doesn't mean that it's the same thing, if that makes sense. So Silent said, why wouldn't the Kalpa affect the entire universe? Mehrunes was made by Alduin after multiple Kalpas, which all that's within Anu's dream. Anu, A-N-U, all caps. And Matt, you said it affects Mundus, which ESO strongly indicates is a multiverse. Calpric cycle equals Mundus equals Satcal cycle equals Arbus dream cycle equals the whole shebang. Which
it's my take on it.
Yeah, which
it's echoes of each other.
Yeah, and while people have argued with me, well, then how come people have sailed to Akavir? I said, well,
to the future. They follow the line.
Not only just a future, but someone else's dream too. Jubal has shared with Anu his idea. If I share with you, I had a plan to write a novel series when I was in high school, and I had this idea of it was this kind of sci-fantasy sort of thing, and we had this alien race called the Nairo, and I told you about the Nairo just now. They now exist in your mind. I haven't told you anything about them. You don't know anything about them. You know that the Nairo are an alien race. So you imagine aliens. And the whole thing was basically an alien race that's like the people in Avatar: The Last Airbender, where you've got people can manipulate the elements. That's this alien race. Boom. Now you have more information to work off of. You've interpreted that a certain way. But it may not be the exact way I interpret it. Right? And so when it comes to things like the Akaviri, the Seasi, for example, Jubal may have a very specific idea of what the Seasi are. Maybe they're men. Maybe they're not. I don't know. But how Anu sees them is they're snake people and they're warlike and they're here to conquer. But
great negotiation.
But that's just Anu's own mindset. He's dealing with grief and conflict and pain. And if you ever
nightmare.
If you've ever seen a video or something of a horribly abused dog, and someone tries to show it affection and it's scared, it thinks you're going to hurt it. That's no matter what the other person's intentions were, that dog is interpreting that as pain. Same thing with Anu. Same thing with the Seasi. The Seasi are love that is interpreted as pain, because Anu is in pain. And that's the whole point of my theory, is that each of these three continents, Yokuda, Tamriel, and Akavir, they are different, and they may exist within Anu's dream, but they're only interpretations. You can trade with Yokuda. It's not the real Yokuda. It is Anu's interpretation of Yokuda. Silence asks, so what causes Anu's pain then? The idea is that Anu killed his wife.
The idea
was that Padome killed his wife.
Well, that's according to the Anuad, but remember when I said earlier, Anu and Padme are two sides of the same coin.
There's three sides to the coin.
They're described as brothers. I think Padme is the part of Anu, all caps, Anu's psyche that he is scapegoating for his own actions. This is the bad part of me. This is the devil that I'm blaming my own bad actions on. And so
it also makes sense in the Truth in Sequence whenever he's like, "Oh, there is no such thing as Padme, only Anu."
Yeah, exactly. That's part of where this idea comes from too. I talk a lot, like John Bernson spent a lot of time reading Truth in Sequence, and he and I discussed it a lot. And that's right where this came from. Anu beat and murdered his wife, and he realizes what he's done. And so he falls into this deep depression. He's guilty, and he's dealing with this conflict and loss and pain and
betrayal.
grief. Yeah, exactly. So that colors everything he sees.
It's the music. That's the primal whale.
Yeah, exactly.
Nern's death cry.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
So Padme is the part of Anu. It's the devil made me do it. This is the bad part of me that forced that caused this to happen. So that's where Anu's pain comes from. And when I say Anu, I'm talking Anu, not Anu. I differentiate the two.
Same.
Old Anu is another way to put it. Yes, that's an Evan Smith term.
He's talking big angsty teenage Anu.
And I mean, and there could be a different reason why Anu sees things in pain and grief. And Mac and I, Mac, that's right, Mac left. Mac and I wrote a piece. We wrote a lore essay about the possibility, about the possibility of the dreamer being a trans woman trying to deal with her transition. And so the conflict comes from, it's an inner conflict.
It's certainly interesting.
And so
I don't agree with it. I don't believe it, but it's interesting.
Yeah, I mean, I don't necessarily believe it either. It was one of those things where, hey,
literary analysis.
Here's the lens. Let's analyze this text through this lens. You might read Trilby by George du Maurier. You may read that through a feminist lens. That doesn't mean the book was written in a feminist way. It just means that you've looked at it in a feminist light. So that's what we were doing, but through a transgender lens. And it was really interesting, actually. We found a lot of parallels, and we found a lot of interesting stuff that we could correlate. And some of it was forced. Yeah. Well, maybe we can interpret it this way. Well, and that's as Matt said, that's really just literary analysis. That's how that works. So personally, I think Anu, all caps, killed his wife in his grief and his primal wail. He fell asleep and attained Amaranth. He reached heaven through violence.
Oof.
Which is why Vivek talks about heaven through violence, or reaching heaven.
He hid in the sun.
Yeah, he hid in the sun and slept.
Magnus.
And that's the idea. Actually, something that Jonathan pointed out to me once. The Anuad is the only book, the only origin story where Anu sleeps. And
it's where the idea comes from. When?
Well, originally, maybe in part. Originally, before the annotated Anuad was included in, I think Morrowind was the first place it was included.
Yes,
I think so.
I think so.
Yeah, it was originally titled A Bosmeri Creation Myth.
I heard it was aided.
I don't think it's Bosmeri. According to the Imperial Library, it says on there it was the Bosmeri Creation Myth. Take a look. If I'm wrong, let me know. And so the Bosmer have spinners. They can alter history, or at least look back far enough in history using memory magic. And
they can. Or I will say with the spinners.
This is what it says on the Imperial Library.
I was gonna say, with the spinners, I brought this up to Belle a couple of days ago. The spinners are literally just heaven's door.
Yeah.
They can alter history, but only for a single person at a time.
Yeah.
But
which is, by the way, hilarious.
But then we get into a butterfly effect sort of thing. If you change history, you step on a butterfly, there's a tsunami in Manhattan. I mean,
no. Here's the thing: you cannot change history as a whole. You can change the individual perceptions of history. So, like in Green Shade, you had a quest where you helped a spinner rewrite a woman's history, wherein you became her friend and you were there for her. You were there to protect her in moments of her history when she was very much alone. Now, in that history, you can kill her bodyguard that you meet in Green Shade. That does not mean that the bodyguard is now dead. He is still very much alive, but according to her memory, he should be dead. I think that's one of the things with the spinners. They can rewrite individual history, but they cannot rewrite. They can't rewrite stone, is what I mean.
They cannot alter stone. I like that.
Yeah. Let's if we try and take it in that direction, the idea of stone is history, water is memory. Therefore, what is a tree? If it is effectively a combination of a solid filled with water.
A tree is maybe.
Yeah.
I
A
like
tree is
it.
maybe.
I like that
think
a
another
lot.
way to see it is a
Magic
tree
and wonder.
is the individual history.
Well, that's why green sap stone is the perchance acorn.
This is why their history is so powerful. They drink water and absorb light.
Drink your water.
All right, time to go start name of that quest, the Hulken's Heart. I'm gonna go start that and be very depressed because of it. And I'm also saying I'm gonna go start it and play through it because I want to actually understand it to see if there might be any misconceptions, because Praxic v. Apraxic a few weeks ago has presented that there might be misconceptions.
All right,
The
so
Pocket Guide to the Empire saying we killed 9 out of every 10 of our babies shows there might be some misconceptions.
I love the really biased stuff.
So we are at about the 2-hour mark.
Yeah.
Unless there's anything else we want to address, another question we want to talk about, I'm probably going to end the broadcast.
Okay.
And the video, we don't have to stop chatting. I mean, we don't have to keep it lore related if, after the broadcast. But to those of you watching at home, thank you very much for tuning in and listening to us drivel about nonsensical bullshit. It's always fun to do. I've been enjoying my mead the whole time, and I'm starting to feel it, so that's good.
Of course you are.
Oh yeah. Well, it's kind of alarming that I feel it as little as I do. This is 19% alcohol, so
38 proof.
Okay.
I can't stand alcohol. Sorry.
I don't even taste the alcohol. Okay. Bye-bye, Internet.
Bye.
Love.
Bye.
Bye-bye.